Hey guys, welcome to another lesson here at THSS Technology. It's been a while, but today we're going to jump back into Unity with a really short lesson on implementing a fire cooldown script. So let's get caught up really quickly with where our game is at. So we have a working movement script right now with boundaries. We have a spawn manager, which is spawning our enemies pretty endlessly, and we can fire our laser. It kills the enemy. We have a live system. We can hit 3 times, but here is the issue. As you can see, I'm firing here, but I can fire as fast as I can press that space bar. Almost to an unrealistic level. It doesn't make sense that we're able to fire that much. So let's fix that today. Let's implement a cooldown system for our firing. This will also give us good opportunity later on that we can add some power-ups that might increase our fire rate to rapid fire and this such. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to hop over to our player controller script here. The reason why we're going to our player controller script, because our player controller script is what has the laser. Okay, so right now we have it set that if we press the space bar, we're going to instantiate our laser. All of that's working. Feel free to watch previous videos if you need to get caught up on that. But what we want to do is we want to set a delay in the time it takes to fire our laser, the time between when we can fire our laser shots. Okay, so after a little bit of research, I found this old documentation on the Unity website here about something called time.time. And in their example, right on the Unity API here, it actually shows how to do a cooldown manager. Okay, and they've had their fire with button 1, of course, and then what they've added here is this time.time. Okay, and what time.time does, time.time is how long the game's been running. Okay, so what they've done is they said if you press the fire button and time.time is greater than next fire, which is a new variable they've created up here, a new float. Okay, then they've defined next fire. Next fire is time.time plus your fire rate, another variable they've created. Then you instantiate it. So what is happening here is when you press your fire button, in our case it's space, it's going to look for the space button, the fire button has been pressed, and then it's going to check to see if the time is greater than next fire. What's next fire? Next fire is the game time, how long the game's been running, plus whatever you set your fire rate to. Okay, so this will make a little bit more sense once we start working it out, but let's jump back into Unity here and into our coding. So let's start by adding our first two new variables first. We'll do a public float, and we'll call this fire rate. Okay. And we'll make our fire rate equal to 0.5f, 5 frames, so half a second essentially. And what that's going to allow us to do, that's going to allow us to shoot every half second. But you can adjust that later, and of course that leaves it good opportunities for power-ups. And then let's create another public float, and let's just call it next fire. Okay, kind of like how they did inside the scripting, and we're going to make that to 0. Okay, so what has happened here is we've created 2 new publics, one called fire rate and one called next fire. Okay, we actually don't need to make this one public because we don't need to change that. So let's just set that to private for now. Let's Control S and save. Okay, now if I go back to my game, it's going to update. I can click play. Nothing's going to change. Okay, nothing's going to change with those variables we created. So let's go back into our script now and let's further develop our if statement here for the laser. Okay, so what we're going to do is now if our input.getKeyDown space, and then we're going to do and. Now remember when we're doing ands, we actually have to do 2 ampersands, 2 and signs. And let's go back to here. And what have they done? They've done time.time. Okay, and that's something that is on the Unity API here. So let's do time, it recognizes .time, greater than our next fire. Okay, so if our input getKeyDown is pressed and the time since the game has been running, that's what time.time is greater than next fire. And next fire currently is set to 0. Okay, let's go see if that works right now. Okay, so that's always going to work because right now our next fire is set to 0 seconds. And our game is always going to be greater than 0 seconds. Okay, so for example, if I set this to 30 frames for next fire, okay, let's go back and check this out. I'm not going to be able to fire yet because it hasn't passed 30 frames. So we're going to have to sit and wait 30 full seconds before we can fire again. That's way too long of a delay. So let's demonstrate that. Instead of 30 frames, let's set it to 5 frames. Okay, let's save that. And remember, it's only going to let us fire once the game time is greater than next fire, which is set to 5. Okay, so let's go back to Unity now. Let's hit play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we should be able to fire soon, hope. There we go. And then now it's been set past 5 seconds, okay? So that's what's happening so far. That way you can set delays before you can do different actions, so you can have it so your player can't do something to a certain amount of time has elapsed. So that's some functionality you can add to your game. But let's put that back to 0 now, okay? And now what we're gonna do is we're going to change, and we're gonna add, we're gonna kind of explain a little bit more detail about what next fire does. So I'm going to go next fire is going to be equal to time dot time, okay, which is just how long the game's been running, plus our fire rate. Okay, so now we're kind of changing our next fire. Before, next fire was just 0 frames, but now we've changed our next fire, saying that our next fire is going to be the time the game is running plus your fire rate. Okay, so that means you're always going to have to wait that half a second, the 0.5 frames, before you can fire again. Let's go test that out. See, look at that. I'm spamming the space bar, but it's only firing every half second, right? So you have to be a bit more thoughtful on your shots now because you can't just spam them endlessly. All right, now that's a little bit too slow, so then I could go back into my player over here, and let's change that to maybe 0.25. So let's double the speed we currently have it. That's a little bit better. That's a little bit more realistic of a shooter there. Perfect. Okay, excellent. So that's how we're going to put a cooldown script into our game. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and we will see you all later.